afternoon and welcome back to the Brand Innovation stage here in the House of Innovation. There's loads going on around here. On your seat you might have found a flyer and it tells you a little bit about what's going on in the House of Innovation. We've got 35 startups, loads of opportunities for you to check out the future of the industry, where it's going, talk to the innovators who are leading that change, jump into one of our 30-minute speed dating sessions or go and talk to them on the booth. But right now we've got a really interesting topic coming up from one of our sponsors. Since MadFest started in 2018, we've been talking about data. It started off with a conversation on how do we get data, then turned into a conversation on how do we use it. We've looked at how do we turn data into insights, into context. But today we're looking at how do we turn that into empathy. And to tell us more, here's Charlie from Incubeta.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out. So I'm going to talk about empathy at scale with thick data. So brands are obsessed with the customer journey. So every brief we see, the brands want to know where the customer comes from and where they're trying to get to. And they want to be able to empathize with the customer and help them along the journey and then be there to reap the rewards at the end of the journey. But the journey is becoming more and more unspoken. So the end-to-end journey is moving online. It's becoming less visible and less tangible. So, for example, at the start of the journey, PwC reports that 28% of consumers go to Google or Amazon for the first piece of information in that journey. And then at the end of the journey, it's no news to anyone that e-commerce is growing massively, and by 2025, it's anticipated that e-commerce sales will reach 25% of total retail sales. And marketing has been left to the big data machines, so we're handing control over to the algorithms. But machines have no heart and have no empathy, and they miss the nuances. They tell us what performs, but not necessarily why it performs. And so there's trouble at the bottom of the funnel. And it looks a little bit like this. So performance marketing looks like this. Brands are noisy and intrusive, and they kind of spam people into submission. They don't really add value or help people along that customer journey. And meanwhile, there's also trouble at the top of the funnel, where brands are trying to relate to customers through lofty brand purpose campaigns. But they come across, again, as a bit out of touch because the topics they're talking about are detached from the everyday functions of their product. So this example from Hellman's, the investor was frustrated because they're talking about mayonnaise's sustainability credentials, not the fact that mayonnaise is good in a sandwich, for example. And there's trouble in the middle as well, or as Google calls it, the messy middle, where because brands don't understand the customer journey, they're unable to connect the dots between the top and the bottom of the funnel. So where can we go from here? How do we ensure that brands come across as relevant, informed, and well-briefed at every interaction with the customer? So for me, it's about trying to drive empathy at scale across the customer journey. So at the top of the funnel, that's about understanding the everyday problems that people have in a given category to prove your credentials. At the bottom of the funnel, it's about getting ahead of the question or helping the customer to overcome the barriers to purchase. And throughout the funnel, it's about being value positive, so leaving the customer better off than when you found them. But how do you identify the problems, and how do you know which questions that you as a brand can support with and actually add value to? So introducing thick data. So thick data is qualitative data which provides insights into people's everyday lives, emotions, problems, hopes, and dreams. And thick data comes from something called ethnography, which is a field of study of observing people's behavior up close. So it's understanding where people have come from and where they're trying to get to. And this is Trisha Wang. She's an ethnographer, and she actually came up with the term thick data. There's a good TED talk, actually, much better than this. So yeah, she was working for Nokia as an ethnographer in 2009, and she went to live with some low-income communities in China. And she saw that they aspired to own smartphones, but they couldn't afford iPhones. So she went back to Nokia with this data, and she said, you should be developing a cheaper version of the smartphone for this big emerging market. But Nokia didn't take to the data because it was only based on a couple of hundred people, and it kind of conflicted with their big data points, which are based on millions of people. The point is that big data missed an important context, which could have saved Nokia, because we all know what happened to Nokia, not saying it's necessarily just because of this. And then the other key point is that thick data draws responses to the questions that you don't ask. Just take a drink. But big data and thick data are perfect sparring partners. So whilst big data is dealing with numbers and machine learning and normalizing, standardizing, defining, but ultimately looks back at historical data, thick data deals with people, human learning, stories, emotion, context, and looks forward based on emerging data. So in a sense, we at Incubeta and every other agency are digital ethnographers. So thick data in our world is everything from YouTube comments to website analytics to social listening. And for me, search data is the thickest form of data because as John Battelle, the Wired founder here says, it represents a placeholder for the intentions of humankind. So it really does detail where people have come from and where they're trying to get to. And so to wrap up, I'm going to take you through some examples of thick data in action. So going back to our point of driving empathy at scale, and first, how do you use thick data to understand everyday problems at the top of the funnel? So to show that you understand customers' everyday problems, you need to talk in their language. And this is a good example from Button-Up Box, all about caring for dogs with diarrhea, which is a everyday problem observable from thick data, and any one of you with a dog will maybe be familiar. But by addressing it, Button-Up Box demonstrates their credentials in the dog diet space. Secondly, understanding the everyday problems ensures that you stay in your lane. And this is a good example of a brand not staying in their lane, not picking on Samsung, but I'm sure many of you will have seen this earlier on in the year. So it's an advert that shows a woman getting up in the night to go for a run in the city and using her fitness watch. So imagine the intended message here was that a fitness watch enables women to run in the city at night. Whereas the message that many people will have maybe received is that Samsung are out of touch with the reality of women's safety. So basically by ignoring the thick data and by not actually thinking about the everyday problems that a fitness watch can solve in the world of running, and fitness watches can solve many problems for runners, they talked about something that they really weren't entitled to and kind of strayed from their lane and burnt trust. So secondly, how do you use thick data to get ahead of the question at the bottom of the funnel? So getting ahead of the question is about moving upstream of the problem. And the problem in this case is that performance marketing tends to congregate at the bottom of the funnel, so it creates unhelpful repetition. So in the example here on the right, you've got beard trimmer with guard, and you can see it's a competitive space and there's lots of adverts. But by moving upstream of this problem and addressing some of the frequently asked questions in the category, or helping customers to overcome the barriers to purchase, brands are able to add more value and actually move to some more white space, essentially. So the example here, if instead of talking about the fact that you sell a beard trimmer with a guard, if you talk about how to trim a beard, does my face suit a beard, or even do men look better with beards, you don't actually need to tell people that you sell beard trimmers with guards, because it's kind of implied. And then finally, using thick data to ensure that you're being value positive as a brand and leaving the customer in a better place to where you found them. So by providing a clear value exchange, you can ensure that you are being value positive. And this is quite a nice example from Huel. So rather than telling everyone that Huel is healthy, Huel actually kind of breaks down some of the components of a healthy diet and then tells people how the product itself supports people in maintaining a healthy diet. So from this advert, the value exchange, or the information you get, is that protein's good for you, eggs are a source of protein, 6 eggs gives you the protein you need, and Huel provides more protein than 6 eggs. So basically, again, Huel is able to actually leave the customer with some valuable information, demonstrate his expertise in the category, and potentially leave the customer better off for having seen the advert. And to wrap up on a quote, I think is mandatory in these situations. It is good to have an end to journey toward, but it is the journey that matters in the end.
That's great, Charlie. I love the case studies, and this idea of thick data, I think it's going to stick. Drop into Slido via the app and ask any questions you might have for Charlie. There's one that's come through here, Charlie. It's to do with your top tips for partnerships and how you work with clients. What are your thoughts? Like, what are your top tips for clients as they get going in this space?
I think probably just prepared to be quite honest about what your brand does and doesn't do, where you can and can't play, and kind of be receptive to the data that the agencies bring you, because it's kind of the reality and the facts. And yeah, it's about, I suppose, not. I can't think of what I was going to say, but yeah, just kind of embracing the reality of what people are interested in.
Yeah. Brilliant. And if people want to talk more, Charlie, how do they do that?
You can come and find Incubeta. We got an umbrella stand just around the corner, right? And we're all here at the front.
Brilliant. Cool. Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks, everyone.